Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tabletop Almanac. My name is Simon, and I will be your reviewer and host for this episode. And we are looking at Crescendo of Violence by Bahr from Osprey Games. This is a neon-noir role-playing game, as you can see from the cover to my physical right, in as much as it is physical. So Osprey Games has been putting out RPGs for a number of years now, pre-pandemic, which does date this video. So maybe 2018, 2019, I think 2019 or so. And I've reviewed a few of them over on the blog. And I've looked at Romance of the Perilous Land, a great sort of D&D-ish, early D&D-ish British folklore game. I've reviewed Jackals, which is a pretty cool Bronze Age fantasy game, Near East setting inspired, and Sigil and Shadow, which is modern day occultism and supernatural fantasy horror stuff. Now, each of these games seems to have its own sort of hyper focus in a way, and they all do a thing, and they do it well. Based on my experience, they achieve what they are aiming for. They're all mostly single creator, and not huge, but lushly illustrated and with single column text. Like, this is just a book, which is great. It's easy to read, easy to hold, and easy to find things in it. Now, I'll point out the art in this is done by, Andrew Thompson. Andrew Thompson's work is awesome. It really sets the tone of the game, as do the rules. But we'll get into that shortly. So Crescendo of Violence is a neon-noir role-playing game. It is set in the 2090s on Earth. So it is science fiction. It is set in New York, which can be replaced by any major city that you'd like. And it is not a cyberpunk game. And in case you were not sure about that, you can tell because it says, hold on. There it is. This isn't cyberpunk. It's not a cyberpunk game. I'll use Bahr's own words to describe it here. While the visual style of this retro-future dystopia might appear cyberpunk, the game itself is not. While it borrows a number of themes from cyberpunk, such as the concerns around advancing technology, disenfranchisement, power, and corporations, it isn't explicitly about these things or pushing back against them. Basically, the game is about people in a noir setting, making hard decisions and hard choices as they go through a hard life. It also, beyond being neon-noir, which is sort of noir where it's not so black and white, it's super colorful. In fact, neon levels of colorful, but still keeps the same tropes. So there are ex-soldiers trying to get by, femme fatales, dive bars, hard-drinking PIs, everyone trying to make a buck to get through the next day. And, however, the morals of the characters are still very much in that gray area. You do what you have to do to get by. Doesn't matter how shiny it all is, that's what's going on. The musical inspiration for it, present in the game as synth jazz, is very much a jazz style. I immediately think bebop, but Cowboy Bebop is one of the inspirations. But it really cuts away from that sort of industrial techno metal of cyberpunk and brings in this other music. As someone who loves music in my games and loves using it as inspiration when I'm prepping for them or playing them, it's awesome that so much of this kind of revolves around that as well. So it's a neon-noir game, but it's also a game of heroic bloodshed, which is a cinema genre that focuses on sort of hyper-stylized action and big explosions. And you can see it in old kung fu movies or newer ones. But it's very smooth action. It's about violence, and it uses violence to communicate ideas as well. Okay, some of the good parts about the introduction here. It gives you a great list of inspiring media, from Blade Runner to Ghost in the Shell to A Better Tomorrow to Leon to John Wick, Maltese Falcon, etc. It gives you some great advice if you are a newcomer to role playing games, which you might be if you pick this up off the shelf of a bookstore, or even are, say, an Osprey miniatures gamer and have come to this, or Osprey historical, you know, their whole military line fan, and you're like, what else is this? What is this Crescendo of Violence game? Some of the things it does really well in this introduction is it prepares both players and GM, acknowledging that the GM is also a player, but takes a different role. I'm still making a distinction between the two. And it talks about what is needed to be a good player, the responsibilities you have. This is something that I've seen pop up on social media discourse lately of this, the time of this recording. And the sort of main point is to keep things going forward. And in doing so, you sort of fulfill Alan Bahr's other points here about having fun and so on. The Game Master, if you're coming to it for the first time and not sure, the main things that it focuses on are, and I'll jump ahead to the GM section because it's kind of covers the same sort of stuff I want to talk about here. It covers, one, the most important advice, which, spoiler, is anyone can do this, and you just need confidence, and screw up because that's how you learn. My sort of extension of that, though he gives some very good points on fairness, listening, preparation, basically when and how to say no, and specific to this game and a number of other modern ones, when and how to surrender narrative control, as well as running a safe game. 1 second on that, though. But by extension, beyond anyone can do this, is find a group that you gel with and is happy to work through it with you. If you're willing to run a game, of which there are not tons of people out there, and having been doing this for measurable decades, not as a forever GM, but a mostly GM, not everyone wants to do it. Not everyone loves doing it, per se. Some people do love doing it. I love doing it. But, it's a skill you learn and you practice. So my add-on to that is find a table that wants to do that with you and is cool with that. So basically, play with friends. Maybe, What's good about this is that because it's such a clear introduction to role-playing games, is that you can probably make your friends play it even if they don't play something else. Just put on like John Wick and Gunpowder Milkshake and something like that, and see how they buy in. But I do want to jump to this part because we are in the section, even though it's a little out of order, running a safe game. It's only 2 pages, but it does talk about a number of different tools to make sure that everyone has fun and no one goes away traumatized, which is critical in any game. I am a massive horror fan and I love running horror games, and this, for all of you naysayers, helps you decide how to do it, what you can do, not just what you can't do. And when you know what you can do, you have so much freedom to keep doing that. If your whole group of the horror game is fine with cannibals, then just throw cannibals at them. Lean into the cannibals. It works. And it's essential for a game. Because if someone doesn't like cannibals, if they really have a problem with them, now you know and you won't put them in the game. It can be something as simple as arachnophobia. Not that it's simple, but, as well known as arachnophobia, it can be something as less thought of as, I don't like people losing fingers. Okay, so safe game. All right, the game uses 10-sided dice and tokens. A green, yellow, and red token for action tokens, and then distinct other tokens for momentum tokens. As long as you can tell them apart, you're good. Okay. I won't get into the setting too much. Needless to say, uh, he does a great job of giving you a history and insight on Neo York, the society that they live in, how technology has affected it, the ubiquity of alternate augmented reality, the movers and shakers, the wealthy elite, the criminals and gangs and crime organizations, and how people live. You know, what do they watch? What do they listen to? Hence synth jazz. What is the fashion, food, problems facing the city, mega corporations? There are all sorts of things here for you to help vividly portray Neo York, and also find plot hooks in. Okay, playing the game. Now, this game uses a number of paths, or if you've played something like Fate Accelerated, you'll know them as approaches, instead of statistics like strength, dexterity, etc. These are things like cautious, clever, empathetic, ways to approach something, ways to do something and complete it, but not specifically representative of your character's physicality, for example. You can be violent and be big or small. Doesn't really matter. Tests are done by rolling a number of 10-siders equal to your rating in the path, and then taking the highest one and comparing it against the difficulty of 1 to 10. Opposed rolls are done the same way, only you're trying to get higher than the other person, equal to or higher than the other person. And then bonuses and penalties add or subtract 10-sided dice. Some of the interesting further things about it are how initiative works. There's no immediate initiative. It is something referred to as the spotlight. Generally, actions take place in the narrative as they would in any role-playing game. But when certain criteria are met, like being under threat or doing something aggressive, someone speaking, taking the lead, etc., that PC gets what's called the spotlight on them, and that's when they take actions. Actions are performed. Actions, as a term, mean you've rolled dice. They're a test. Actions are performed by spending one of your 3 action tokens I mentioned earlier. There's a green, a yellow, and a red. And the fun thing about it is that there's a neat little... The sidebars are all like neon, which is kind of cool. Is they promote the idea of working through failure. These characters are highly fallible, as they should be in this genre, so they're going to fail sometimes, and your green token gives you a bonus to your test, your yellow token is neutral, and your red token gives a penalty to your test, and it's a significant penalty too. So spending the red token means that you have a very high chance of failing. So how do you work through that? When do you use it? And so on. Combat is fast and it's furious. There's no real other way to describe it. You roll to hit, it's an opposed roll, and if you hit an NPC, they remove 1 point of harm. When they hit 0, they're taken out of the action, and a PC will suffer a consequence of some sort, and once all 3 consequences are used up, they're 4 consequences, they're taken out of the action until brought back in through various means. So it's a neat little way to do that. And then there are 2 sort of, I guess you would call them meta currencies these days. Momentum, which lets you, well, you gain it in a variety of ways, like rolling well and so on. But it lets you act again, lets you take the spotlight, and so on. And reserves, which let you get momentum or get a second wind, things like that. They're also used on some other abilities and powers and such. One thing I found really great about games these days is when they include downtime actions and rules. Right now, as of this recording, I'm playing Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and they have endeavors that take place over a couple of weeks between adventures. It's a great way to occupy their time and give a mechanical benefit for doing so. All right. In Crescendo, downtime actions include things like practicing, relaxing, earning money, making friends, making up with enemies, and so on. And what's really neat about it is that some of these can only be used at certain times during the story. So, for instance, you can only make a friend at the end of a story, in the outro. So it's the idea of like, oh, we fought well together. I'll call upon you again if I need you. Things like that. So it's a really neat way of structuring it and adhering to the genre. Like I said, these games are pretty focused on making sure they adhere to their design goals. And Alan Bahr does a fantastic job with Crescendo of Violence. One of the other great rules included here is heat. And if you're used to something like Blades in the Dark or any of the other games where the more shit you disturb, the more attention you get, then this is what it's for. So there is a list of organizations in Neo York that your PCs can gain heat with, and then the GM spends it on things that get in your way. It's a fun little, actions have consequences mechanic. Always good for this sort of thing. Okay. I suppose I did already talk about GM stuff, so I'm going to go still in order of the book, because this section actually comes before it, and then we're going to get into character creation. And as we do character creation, I'm going to show you a character I've made and talk you through the various steps. So we talked about downtime actions and how they can only take place at certain stages of the story, and how I thought that was cool, because it is. It's also a way to help reinforce the genre, and the section on story structure contributes to that. So there are 5 stages or 5 acts in a session, and the idea is to, one, make it easier to plan, but also it really just sort of helps you establish things and isolate certain actions to certain stages. So the setup has, what have you been doing since then, or the last time we met, what happens when the GM spends heat, you've got the main plot, you've got the sort of rising action here called the Quiet Before the Storm, and then the big finale. And here is probably, but then the outro, which we talked about before, right? Like, I will see you again on the battlefield, kind of thing. Here's one of the things I really like about this setup. In a noir story, and this actually has, if you've played something like Cthulhu Confidential or any of the Gumshoe 1-to-1s, they've also got a sort, it's not the same thing, but they look at the genre and aim for the same thing, that the protagonist is not out of the story until the very end, because one, it's a one-on-one game, so if the protagonist dies halfway through, then unless you've got a junior partner there to pick up the slack, well, that's the end of your story. But what is maybe different in this, because it's a whole group, is that you simply can't have PCs die until the final act, until Act 3. There's no narrative point to it. Unless there is a narrative point, you could probably do that. No one's, the game police aren't going to come and take the book away from you. They are busy hunting down Mage Revised and Mage 2nd Edition. Sorry, Mage 2nd Edition, not Revised. What am I talking about? But the idea that they can go through all this to get to the finale, and then they get their, cinematic heroic death. That works. That fits the style that you're after. The idea is that a death needs to be meaningful. And it's not meaningful if it happens early on. That works perfectly for some games, but not Crescendo. Okay. Character creation. And I'm going to pop up on the screen the character sheet. And I'm going to move myself a little bit so it's easier to see us both. Okay. Here we go. So this is one part of the character sheet. And you can see down one side we've got the paths. And then you've got some other information around here. So I haven't given the character a name yet, but I liked the idea of him being an ex-military, fought somewhere. So his profession is veteran, and that was sort of the concept. He's an ex-veteran, he's trying to make ends meet. In your origin, you can pick one of 5 different kinds. Anything from baseline human to clone to Generation G, which is the gene-modified, neo-humans, I guess. And I picked a cyborg, because I thought if he's been in the shit a lot, then maybe he has some parts replaced. So he's a cyborg, and he's a veteran. And both of those things determined a few other things here. All of your paths start at 2, and then you gain sort of increases in them from different things. So I raised my violent to 3, and then later on I raised my fast to 3. And then I got a special ability from veteran. When you make a damage roll, spend a reserve right here to add plus 1d10. Cool. And then my profession also determined my choice of talents. And I picked killer, which can... Oh, let's double check. I think it can re-roll... Killer... oh, yes, your damage rolls are increased by 1d10. And you gain a momentum whenever you kill a target, which is kind of badass. Then the other one was tough as nails. I had a couple of different options. I was looking at hard to kill, which gives your resolute 1 point higher when you're resisting damage, but I liked tough as nails better, which is if you discard your green action token due to damage, you then get to take a yellow action token, which means you can have 2 yellow action tokens, which is cool. Extra action token, he gets hit, he kind of comes back, not harder, but he's still in the game. Okay, equipment, which is on the second page, right here. All right, so one of the things you do is everyone gets this basic set of equipment, sort of in the middle there, where it says equipment. An ear link, AR glasses, a dumb box, and basic professional gear. The last of which should be pretty self-evident, and that's something that you and your GM are going to have to agree on, what counts as professional gear for me. A dumb box is a wrist-worn or implanted device that lets you interface with computing terminals. They're called that because they have no AI functionality. AR glasses, augmented reality glasses, you can see stuff. And an ear link, which is like a smartphone, but it's an earbud. There is, I believe I may have mentioned, but if not, part of the setting is that all of your tech is constantly being charged and recharged, so you never really run out of the energy of it. And there's an AI that sort of handles a lot of the basic functionality of things. Okay, weapons. So I picked a heavy pistol because it's more concealable, and I love this name, Thunder Knuckles. Okay, the heavy pistol is just a good range weapon that can be inside a jacket, and the Thunder Knuckles are like brass knuckles, but they stun people. And in an example of play that I kind of rolled through, and I'll just talk you through rather than roll through it all, because I can basically tell you how it worked, they proved very useful. You can get modifications for your weapons, not many of them, but they're there. Armor is basic, it's light, medium, or heavy, and it gives you a bonus to resolute, again, but it also makes you a bit slower. You can also connect it to sort of networks as well. Okay, then the other gear, one of the other things here. So you can see here cybernetics. Being a cyborg, I got 20 cost of cybernetics. Cost is basically, each of them costs a certain amount. Pretty self-explanatory. There are not many choices. However, that doesn't matter. Because 20 points went a very short way. I gave him a cyber arm. Technically, it looks like it should be 2 cyber arms, but I'm happy with 1. And then I also gave him iNet implants. Basically, they're cyber eyes, and they link to your wetnet, your whole network. And they work like AR glasses, only they won't fall off, and they work a bit faster. And you can upgrade them with the AR sight mods as well. And so I gave infravision, which lets me see heat signatures, because I didn't like night vision, only because, so sudden flashes and bright lights can disorient you. Well, it's neon. There's a lot of neon everywhere. And maybe I want to explode stuff, and then that'll cause a problem. And that's it. I got those 2 things with 20 points. So there's definitely room to increase that and modify yourself further. But again, it's not cyberpunk, and so there's not as much of a reason to have it. It's there because, not necessarily because it's expected, but because partly it's expected to have that sort of tech in 2090, in a gritty actiony game. But it's not the focus of things, as we've talked about. And then there are gene mods, which you'll get if you're Gen G. Hacking is very simple. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but it's 2 pages. This. And it covers basically everything you would need from a regular hacking system. The different actions you can take when hacking, the defenses networks and things have when you're hacking them. Done. Simple. NPCs are done very nicely. They are a short line of 6 stats: physical, social, mental, combat, damage, and harm. The first 5 are all XD10. So that's what they're going to roll in those arenas. In physical, they'll roll 2d10. In combat, they'll roll 3d10. And then harm is a number, as I may have mentioned earlier, and every time they get hit, that gets reduced by 1. And when it gets to 0, they're out of the fight. Done. Nice and simple. The test I did was with my character against 2 beat cops. So that's the book. That's the entirety of it. And that covers a lot. It's going to really give you most everything you need to play through. It's not really nothing's in your way. It's very straightforward, and it really focuses on big action and big fun. So definitely take advantage of pumping up your descriptions, all those things. So I'll talk you through the little combat scenario I did. Put the spotlight on my veteran to start because he's the protagonist, and for whatever reason he has to fight these 2 beat cops. So he gets his first action, and he spent his yellow token, and he rolled his violent of 3d10, got higher than 1 cop, which meant he did a point of harm. Then I had him spend a momentum to do it again and take him out, because he rolled high. The other one went, and he rolled, and my veteran rolled higher, so he didn't take any consequences from it. So then, because he was in close range, because they're range bands rather than precise ranges, which is perfectly fine. There's no reason to get too precise unless you're all sitting there or have it on your VTT, the exact measurements that you want to use. So then for the second one, I used his red token to move up. Another momentum, because he took somebody out, so his pool didn't go down. I actually rolled them 10s too, so it went up even higher. And then he uses his Thunder Knuckles, and when you hit, you stun, they're taken right out of the action. Done. Very fast. It went, literally it was 3 actions to take them down, 4 if you count moving, and only one of them got a shot off at him. Now imagine you've got a group of PCs. I probably wouldn't do this necessarily, personally, with more than 4 people, and I would even bust it out maybe if I had a group of 2 wanting to play, because otherwise you gotta have a whole lot of cannon fodder running out there to make it worth your while. However, that being said, because combat is so fast, it means that you can get through it while having fun, but it doesn't bog down your session that much, and instead it makes it just kind of quick and exciting, and then you get back to the neon-noir stuff. So there it is. That's Alan Bahr's Crescendo of Violence from Osprey Games. It's fast and exciting, very flavorful, definitely has some useful stuff to kind of maybe crib for other games that you're running too, because it's sort of game structure, narrative structure elements, which he has a really good grasp on, as evident in this book. So check it out. I'll have a link to places you can purchase it, either digitally or physically, in the description below. And thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch you next time.